To open up, I wanted to thank everyone for attending. This has been an exciting process, and I appreciate the partnership with Yard and Company, especially Kevin Wright and of course Danielle Beltran, who have helped us lead us through this process for the Heritage Hill District on Vine Street. The Village of St. Bernard was a recipient of a mini planning grant through Hamilton County. We went through the vetting process to look for partners to help guide us through that, and Yard and Company became the obvious choice. So we went under contract with Yard. They have been great to work with, and again, considering them as a partner as they've listened to the steering committee, the client group, and of course the community as a whole who have gone through the community engagement portion of the process. So as far as trying to come up with a vision for the Vine Street Heritage Hill District and creating a destination for Vine Street has been a real importance. So this has been exciting, and I am thrilled that we actually can see a vision for that area. So again, thank you all for attending today, and I'll turn this back over to Kevin.
All right. Appreciate that introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Wright. I'm with Yard and Company. Yard and Company is an urban design and planning firm based here in the Cincinnati area that works around the country. We have a variety of service offerings that are very much place-based. We do branding, activation, development, strategy, and planning, among other things. And so you'll see that kind of those levels of expertise kind of sprinkled out throughout the slides today. My background, I'm the principal and co-founder of the firm. We're about 8 years old, and my background is in community development. So I ran a community development, the district development in the Walnut Hills neighborhood for about 8 years. And I'll hand it off to Daniela to introduce herself.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Daniela Beltran. I'm the planning. So supporting this through the planning, data collection, and engagement we've been doing throughout. Happy to be involved with this project. And then I will just quickly mention a couple housekeeping. If you've participated on a Zoom webinar, there's a Q&A box, and we'd like for any questions as we go, if you could drop those there. It's just down at the bottom with the question mark and a quote bubble. We'll keep an eye on that and then plan on collecting those and saving them for the end of the presentation, and then we'll dig into that.
All right, great. Well, thanks to everyone who's attending today. We'll be as brief as we can. We have quite a few slides to go through, but we'll get through them as quick as we can. And as Daniela said, then address questions and comments in the chat box. And we're also recording this, and so it'll be posted online. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. So people who couldn't attend today can also watch it on their own time and make comments. The purpose of the project is to look at the Heritage District, as the mayor said, and think about how to create a master plan for that district that helps to leverage some of the village-owned property, helps to enhance the experience of small businesses, the pedestrian experience, how it's activated, how it's talked about. It's a pretty comprehensive project within a fairly small focus area, which is very exciting. We kicked off our process with the village back in August. You can see here we break our process into 3 phases: explore, test, and build. We're about to walk you through some of the explore findings. We spent a lot of time working with the task force, the staff at the city, stakeholders. We did some engagement. We launched a survey that hopefully some of you or all of you have participated in, and did our own analysis as well. And that led to a summary memo that started to then drive how we would think about reinvestment and revitalization in the district in the test phase. And in that phase, we developed 2 or 3 different design scenarios. We worked with the task force on that. We also did some pop-up open houses and engaged people around those specific scenarios. This is, I would say, we're mostly out of the test phase, but you could think of this as the final portion of the test phase, where we're hoping to engage people today as well, and then give time for people to watch this and give us comments as well before compiling it into a final plan that we'll present to Village Council for adoption. Bi-weekly, we've been meeting with these folks. This is our kind of project team. It's a mixture of village administration and stakeholders, and also our partners at Alloy Development who funded the project and lead economic development across Hamilton County. When we first started this project, we didn't have a picture of Chris, so we used a St. Bernard. And then because we think it's funny, we've just left it in there this whole time. We also formed a project task force for the plan. They've met twice during the process at key moments where we've had recommendations to bounce off them. And you can see their job description there on the left-hand side of the screen, and then the names of the folks that are on that task force to make sure a mixture of different types of people, businesses, property owners, residents, council member, and somebody representing the church and the school. One thing we did early on as we examined the district is we noticed that it really is in many ways, although very much very compact and only about a half-mile long, which is not a long district, which is good. It had these different personalities to it based on the sort of physical makeup and the infrastructure. And so we thought as we started the project, it would be good to break it into these 3 districts just in terms of our planning and design thinking. So the northern section of the district in blue, what we're calling St. Bernard Square Node 1 district, is different than the others in the sense that it has a lot of auto-oriented uses like the Dollar Tree, some restaurant and fast food uses. And also there's been a planned development for this node in the district for quite some time that is still being worked on. We're not addressing that specifically in our plan because it's been in the works for a while and it has its own kind of trajectory at the moment. But yeah, this section of the district is pretty unique and different than the rest. And then there's the middle area that we're calling the connector, where you have a lot of civic uses. You have the city offices, the schools in the park are just off the screen here. You have some great historic mixed-use buildings as well as you move south towards the green area on Vine Street. But it's an important connector because we think long-term will really help, if done right, bridge the gap between Node 1, where there's the mixed-use development that is planned, and then this Node 3, which we're calling the Main Street in the green here. This is a really great kind of traditional, what we would call traditional historic mixed-use walkable district. You have the beautiful church kind of anchoring it, which you can see from far away. You have opportunities with some vacant land to do some new development. You have some opportunities with some vacant buildings to adaptively reuse, but you also have some basically traditional historic mixed-use buildings. And there's also this really unique opportunity to connect to Vine Street Park, which we see as a real differentiator for St. Bernard, to have an aquatic center, baseball field, basketball, pickleball courts right in the heart of your business district, although a little disconnected and downhill from it, which is one of the things that we want to address and we'll talk about in a moment. So I'm going to hand it off to Daniela to walk through how we've started to map in this existing conditions phase what exists today from a commercial standpoint and a parking standpoint. And then she's going to walk us through some of that initial engagement that we've done.
Thanks. So this map, we wanted to understand what are the types of commercial uses and businesses across this district. So that's kind of what this map is showing. So it is color-coded, where the darker red is businesses that are offering food and beverage. That makes up a pretty good chunk, although within that, some of those provide dine-in option while others do not. You can see in the orange are more service-oriented. So the district is about equal parts of those 2 types. And they are, you can see, spread around along Vine Street. So the bright purple, there's just a couple of these where those are like daily goods, and that's meant to be where you can purchase food and kind of more staple items. And then the more muted purple is general merchandise. So that kind of includes something like the Dollar Tree. And then in vacant, a very pale pink, there are some properties along here that are zoned and suited for commercial uses that are currently not housing a business. So this helps us get a lay of the land of what's here. One thing that has come up, as you'll see in our engagement and through our kind of take on this, there's a big opportunity for more food and beverage to provide kind of a different offering than what's already here, especially things that offer kind of a sit-down experience. So this next map is really looking at parking. That came up a lot in our conversations. And again, we wanted to take inventory of what exists today. And so you could see the darkest shade of purple those are the public surface lots. So those are really meant to be the kind of most convenient and go-to places for if you're visiting the district. There are several lots you can use to park your car. So there's about 100 spaces between the 4 main lots along Vine. Then we also looked at parking that is considered, we labeled it as shareable. And so these are kind of associated with a public use, such as the school or the library or the city office building. But since those mainly have daytime users, those are kind of a good place if you're visiting here in the evening. Those tend to have availability. We also marked up that there's quite a bit of on-street parking spaces along Vine and right off of Vine Street. So we've kind of taken account of those. And then in the teal color, those are private lots. So they're associated with a specific business, but just noting that a lot of the businesses located here do offer parking. And then just going into some highlights of where we really get excited about the opportunities for the district. So building off of what we've just looked at, it's helpful to note that there is parking available across the district. Again, many businesses already are providing their own. And then for those that don't, there's quite a bit of options along the street. And as we've noted, we are thinking about who's parking when. And so there really is a pretty good symbiotic dynamic where, there's kind of some influx of parking during the daytime if you're visiting St. Clement or a school, but that kind of allows that frees up parking for evening visitors. And same with the on-street, there's a nice mix and turnover with those spaces. We also do think, I want to note that the district is nicely walkable. So having those public lots in different locations along Vine Street means that wherever you're parking, you really can get to a lot of things within a short walk within 5 minutes. So that's a really great benefit of the district. A couple challenges as we think about adding new businesses, new users, new development. We do want to be cognizant of parking associated with that. There's not a ton of opportunities to expand parking, although there are some, and we'll talk more about that. One thing to note about walkability, St. Bernard benefits from being really tight-knit. A lot of people, depending on where you live, can pretty easily get to Vine Street. But it's not enough just to be in close proximity. To have an enjoyable walk also requires sort of a visual appeal, a sense of safety. And so we want to make sure we're building up not only the physical attributes, but a culture around walking in the district. And one thing that'll help with that is attracting businesses that are really destination oriented and sort of contributing to things going on along Vine Street. So I'll dig into how we've been engaging with members of the public throughout this. One has been a survey that we posted in November, and we've had over 130 people participating in that survey. So there's about 9 key questions in that survey that have been really helpful to the way we've been thinking about strategies for the district. So one is really understanding what is causing you to leave St. Bernard, what are those types of businesses that we maybe need to focus on attracting? Food and beverage rose to the top, as you can see, along with general retail, which includes things like clothing and home goods. Professional services was part of that list, and that might be like daycare or dry cleaning, along with arts and culture. So there's already, a few businesses that fit this, but I think there's an interest in seeing more of those. We asked about types of events and programming that you'd like to have in the district. And so we gave some suggestions, and those all got pretty good responses. The ones that rose to the top were music and entertainment, markets like farmers market, craft market, and daily activities. We also asked about one thing that you'd like to see from an improvement standpoint, what would be really helpful to invest in. And people actually thought that the properties and buildings themselves was going to be important. And I think that kind of makes sense given some of the vacancy that's here. And it goes to the visual appeal and sense of safety. So that is definitely something that we've looked at. We're curious to know, when you think about St. Bernard, what 3 things rise to the top, like what comes to mind. And so we were excited to see that the traits that people associate with St. Bernard are community-oriented, family-friendly, and small-town atmosphere. We also took inventory of what you wish people knew more about St. Bernard. And so these were kind of similar to what we just talked about, but people responded that St. Bernard is really a tight-knit and engaged community. People like and want to share that, things are really close. So there's a convenience aspect here that people may not be aware of. And then just this pride around how comfortable, calm, and friendly the community is. And we also thought about who is the audience here? Who does St. Bernard typically attract? We heard that it seemed to be really suitable for young families, retirees, and students and professionals. And then lastly, we asked, what else would you want to share about your experience in the district? So some things that kind of were commonly mentioned was the sense that we are really ready for redevelopment. There's kind of, I think, people are tired of seeing these empty buildings and are eager to find ways to attract new users and have a more dynamic district. Part of the way that people hope to see things brought in is those sit-down restaurants, along with better grocery options. There's a sense that St. Bernard has really high, exciting potential and has just been currently underutilized. So there's kind of goes along with the sense that there's room for growth, but we want to make sure we're intentional about who we're inviting to come here. And then the fourth big category was this kind of request to prioritize quality of life improvements. So those are things like walkability, having trails and walking paths, which will be really helpful as we think about the connection with the park. And then just more basic things like code enforcement and really prioritizing historic amenities that are here. This last slide on engagement, this is an overview of who participated in that survey. And we were pleased to see that it's a nice mix and pretty reflective of the community as a whole. We had a really good spread of age groups, people that have lived here for both shorter and longer time periods. So thank you for those that participated. More recently, we've, to support the online surveys, we've also hosted a couple open houses, and this is where we had big boards up showing the work that we've been doing lately. And so these 2 events were in December. So one was at the city offices, and the other was during the Light Up St. Bernard event in early December. And between those 2, we had about 125 people or so engaging with the content and talking with us about it. And again, some reoccurring things from those conversations are noted here. People emphasize the desire to really dig deeper into the walkability of the district, really getting back to Vine as a traditional main street, but has really opportunities for events and programming and reasons to meet up with friends and neighbors. There is consistent support for small scale activations, and by that we mean events and cool places to sit outside, and kind of starting to do those right away. And then the third one is that, housing is really important as we talk about bringing new businesses that does require new residents to support. And there's a lot of conversations about how do we balance the need for new housing with trying to make it context sensitive and fit in with the neighborhood format.
Okay, great. So let's get into the sort of phase 2 conceptual work we've been doing. This is going to be the fun part. As you can see from what Daniela presented, we have spent a lot of time engaging folks both digitally and also popping up where we can. So for periods of time where people can meet with us. And that has all shaped, which is an important part of our work, kind of a vision statement for where we think we're heading for revitalization and development standpoint in St. Bernard. And, I'm not going to read this vision statement verbatim. It's up here on the screen. But essentially where we started to really dig in was how do we, meet some of those quality of life requirements, add some more small businesses that activate the streets and sidewalks more, retain the small town charm and the village vibes, as we say, of St. Bernard that are so special about the place and so unique, especially for the area we're in. And more and more become a place where you can really spend your entire life. You can get married and buy a house. You can have your kids. You can raise your kids. And you can stay and retire. And each of those audiences and those demographics has something, for them within the district. We even go so far as to map out a day in St. Bernard because it helps us as a team think about our design principles in a very specific way. So what is the morning time, feel like on a Wednesday in the district? People are walking to the park, maybe taking their dog for a walk, maybe if their kids are younger, taking them to the playground, hitting a cafe, dropping a book off at the library. A lot of this is already available to you today. So it's really just enhancing that. And it's so unique what you guys have within such a small, tight area in the district. I can't emphasize enough that we think we're really adding to what you have as opposed to creating anything new necessarily. Same with lunchtime, stopping by, maybe if you're a remote worker, you work nearby and grabbing lunch, running errands. You can do a lot within St. Bernard without leaving. The afternoon, the aquatic center could be open. You're buying some snacks. You're grabbing some early dinner, and then in the evening, really making sure there's opportunities to sit outside and have a drink and gather with friends and have some fun. And so all of these things have design principles attached to them that have helped us start to sketch out these emerging scenarios that we're about to walk you through. As I mentioned earlier, we broke the district into these 3 nodes or personalities and have some kind of principled thinking around each one. One thing I also mentioned earlier is how lucky you guys are to have property in the district that is controlled by the village. In a world today when property values are so high and it's hard to acquire property, this is a really unique asset that you have land that can be built on because you control it and you can control its destiny. So we're very excited about that. So this angle of the map is looking to the north. So on the upper left, there's that more auto-oriented St. Bernard Square area. And then just to the south here, which we'll be starting with, is where the St. Clement School and the church is. And so throughout the next few slides, we'll be moving south to north. So looking in at that Main Street subdistrict, we looked at a few sites here. One being in the bottom is a strip mall, a small strip mall that has a vacant space in it, also has a cell phone store and a market. There is vacant land next to St. Clement School that's controlled by the village where we see an opportunity for new development. And there's also the former bank at 4521 Vine that sits vacant. and we've been working with the property owner there. And then at the top of the screen is a really unique site, which you'll see us talk about in a minute, that has the opportunity to connect into the park, where the village owns kind of the U-shaped property wrapped around a historic home in the middle. So starting with that strip mall I mentioned, you know, as we go through these aren't all, we're not treating these at all like, you know, large scale development sites. We want to kind of build on what you have and not necessarily look at tearing down buildings and building new buildings, but how do we enhance the usability of some of these existing buildings. And so in this strip mall here down by the cemetery, this is an important building because it is really right at your gateway. So when you're entering the district from the south, it's one of the first things you see. We think that the wall on that southern facing portion could be a great kind of gateway mural that you see coming in. We think there's an opportunity with the vacancy on that left-hand side storefront to actually bring some of the life of that outside, maybe through a food and beverage use. And you can see as part of Yard's approach, we think about short-term activation as much as we kind of think about medium-term and long-term activation. There's an opportunity maybe during a regular event that the village puts on to activate the space with a food truck, some picnic tables that could draw in a permanent tenant to come into this building and really improve the look and feel of it and give you a reason to go that doesn't exist today. Then jumping down to that vacant site by the school, and I'm going to sprinkle in some of the comments we received, particularly in the open houses about these different scenarios. This was one that got a lot of attention. So this is a mixed-use development by the school with not with retail occupying all of the ground floor. So as you can see, kind of on the more Vine Street facing side, there's residential walk-ups and then ground floor retail on the corner to kind of anchor that corner. We think the corner here is really important because you have the Dairy Queen, you have the Mediterranean restaurant. It's kind of the first intersection you hit when you're entering the district. So it's vacant isn't doing you a lot of good at the moment. One thing we heard when we presented this option, and we've already made the change to present another option, is a little bit of nervousness about how dense this is, how many apartments there are next to the school, and then also a concern about a lack of parking for the site. So we have developed a second option that takes a smaller footprint approach, where you could potentially still anchor the corner with that retail. You could still have a few residential uses and a little bit more parking that could probably be used for the dish. Some of the spaces could be utilized for the district itself, not just for the development site, and help really with this corner. So we're going to be presenting both options as we're doing today. We think it's important to keep options open as you move forward, but this is our way of beginning to address any concerns about the scale of the building, the number of units, and the parking spaces. And you'll see in each of our slides some example imagery of what a building like that might look like. Jumping over to the former bank, you can see the existing picture on the upper left. This is a lot like the strip mall. We think this is a really cool opportunity to adaptively reuse this building into a cafe or some kind of really active use that brings something new to the district. And that with a little bit of love from a paint or mural standpoint, as well as landscaping and outdoor dining, this building could really become a dynamic kind of point in the middle of this block. And then lastly on this node, this is the site, as you can see in the upper left here, where the vacant land around that house in the middle is controlled by the village. We have been, throughout this process thinking, man, that Vine Street Park is such an asset, but if you're driving through or walking through or, stopping at a local pub, you don't really know it's there. And it's a huge asset. And so what is the best way to begin to connect down into that? And so we've been working with the village on this idea, which would really enhance the park of a pavilion or amphitheater to be built at the bottom of the hill here, where there's already a sort of serpentine wall in the district or in the park, excuse me. And then how do you think about development and land use on Vine Street that collaborates really well with this park use. And so we have in this option a couple of retail buildings that would be built new that would really have kind of back patio spaces, still some street fronting spaces as well, but would really engage the park and draw people in to come down into the park and utilize the park. And really, kind of here having a 2-stage amphitheater pavilion where you could sit up on a patio at a restaurant or bar and watch music, or you could sit in the park with your lawn chairs and with your kids running around in the green space and watch a community concert as well. This option, I'm going to show you a couple of other options for this one. This was really well received in our open house engagement. Got a lot of positive responses to this one. People really loved the idea of connecting the district and the park and making it feel kind of like all like one big vibrant public space. The other two options we presented here, which were less well received, one being a townhome project on the upper portion, reusing that existing house as retail, but then building 8 new townhomes. This kind of cuts off the park, and I think that's why, and privatizes that edge of the park, which I think is why people reacted negatively to it. And then we also presented an option with a little more density where you would have a sort of basic 4/1 residential over some retail tuck under parking. Again, kind of closes off that section of the park from an edge standpoint, and that was not well received. All right, jumping down to what we're calling the connector subdistrict. On this one here, we looked at 2 sites. One is the former police and safety building at 4700 Vine, and then also the former Chicken Scratch building, which is currently vacant. So first off, spending some time on the police station building. This has been a fun one to look at. I think at first glance, when you see this building, you might think, man, there's not a lot of windows. It's sort of a brutalist kind of building from a time when there was a lot of brick and a lot of concrete. So maybe we should demolish it. That's kind of one kind of initial instinct that folks might have. But as you look closer at it, it actually has these really unique kind of nooks and crannies that could be great patio space for a restaurant or a bar or both. It also is a building that has already an existing connection right down to the aquatic center and park through the stairwell you see on the screen. It has garage doors to what could be a really fun patio space where you could come up from the pool and grab some food or vice versa. And so we really started gravitating towards how do we reuse this building in the heart of the district to really bring a ton of energy. And again, being fortunate that it is controlled by the village. And so you can see in the upper left-hand portion of the screen here an existing kind of aerial of the building. And then of course our short-term and long-term thinking. And you can see that the building itself, the 1-story section with the garage doors, is really its own section of the building. And we love that section as a potential food and beverage use, activating the outdoors, having a relationship to the park and the pool. And then the other section of the building could be a small scale footprint for office space, maybe co-working or multiple tenants. In our work, we see a lot of small floor plate office buildings doing very well right now. Office is hard from a larger scale footprint with, of course, virtual work and hybrid, but in a highly amenitized space like you're seeing on the screen here, we think it's not far-fetched to think about recruiting in some small office users here, which is really exciting. And then we'll talk about this more here in just a second. But in the bottom left-hand screen, this is also a space today because you control it that could be activated monthly starting this spring or summer, where you could start holding events and bringing people to the site, bringing people up from the pool, and it being this like immediate term, activated community space. And then what that would do is start to show to the market that there's a lot of people here that are willing to spend time and money, and that would be a recruitment tool for the right kind of tenant to come in. We actually took it one step further and fully designed out the brand identity of that activation. This is not a brand for the permanent use, but for what we might like pursue in the spring and summer. So you can see that we've started calling it Bernie's, leaning in and sort of modernizing the St. Bernard look and feel, and leaning in also to calling it a dog bar and a patio by the pool. Being a place where you could bring your pets, your family, your kids, but also eat hot dogs, kind of playing off both those things, with both being kind of very community friendly. You could see yourself running up and getting a few hot dogs for your family while you're down at the pool. And then also this audience, getting really specific about this audience of people who have dogs that would want to come and spend some time and sit outside. And you can see how we've begun to lean into that too. We really think some kind of German food concept and beer concept would do well here, based on the heritage and history of St. Bernard. So we leaned into that a bit as well. So there's some more refinement that can be done here, but one of the more immediate implementation opportunities that I'm very excited about, and we've received a lot of positive feedback around, is how to activate this space really soon. Some more activations of what that might feel like. Lastly, almost done, I promise. There's the former Chicken Scratch building that a lot of people have, asked a lot of questions about. This one, again, is in our mind very similar to the strip mall and to the former bank. We have engaged with this property owner as part of this process. He is very passionate about doing something good for St. Bernard. The Chicken Scratch concept fell through and didn't work out in the way that he would like, and he's actively searching for tenants today. So we don't think this is a property owner problem at all. So when we've talked to him, we think this is more about how can you enhance the exterior of the building, add outdoor seating, the landscaping. So again, if I'm driving through St. Bernard and I see people outside having a good time, well-lit spaces, it catches my eye, and I say, okay, you know what, man, I need to come back to St. Bernard with my family and go to dinner or have a Saturday out. So this is one of those examples of really just enhancing the exterior of the property. So before we start looking at the Q&A that has probably dropped into the chat, for us, what's next is to take the recording of this webinar today. We're going to post it online on social media and the website of the village, and we're going to put specific instructions for people to send comments and questions they have. So again, because we're happy and appreciate everybody showing up today, but not everybody could be here. So we want to make sure other people have the opportunity as well. We'll begin putting together the final plan for either February or March for sort of a village council vote and adoption process. And then also be putting together some specific implementation guidance from there. And then we can get to work at over the next few years, putting all this together. But we think you guys are in a great situation to create some real change over the next few years. So I'll pause there. I have not reviewed the Q&A, but maybe Daniela can kick us off.
Yeah, we've not had anything posted there yet. We had one kind of clarification question that maybe we can flip back to on the concept by the park with the retail on stage.
There we go.
Yes. So just to kind of clarify this, so as you know, the Vine Street Park does have a ball field that's in the background. So this development we're showing would really be on the hillside area. So we would kind of clear out a bit of the trees kind of carefully. We'd love to keep some of those trees intact to really contribute to the kind of outdoor atmosphere. But the concepts there's a service road that you may be familiar with that goes around the ball field. So this development we're showing kind of starts there and moves its way up the hill toward Vine Street. And then we'll kind of also note, as we think about, as you've seen, we do think about how things can get phased. And we, in the final document, will describe that here. One thing we have in mind, so there's that existing home in the center of the proposed retail spaces. There's active conversations with the family that owns that building. So that one would be a great one to start with as far as renovating it, fixing it up, and getting it ready for a commercial use. And then if we're not quite ready to build out the new building types, we've seen some examples of like quick build kiosks or, something like more like a market shed, kind of nicely done, but small. That can be a good way to test things out with both the vendor and just, figure out what's the right hours for this location and things like that. So for a site like this, we've seen some really good examples where you start in that way without huge investments, learn a lot from it, and then, do your fundraising, and then make that really informs your decisions with what the permanent build out can look like.
While you're on this, if I could, with respect to the stage slash amphitheater that you see, would complement the smaller scale side for a smaller event, but yet the goal I think would be to be able to utilize the stage to be dual purpose, dual sided, so that for larger scale events that we hold in the park, we're able to get the best use out of that structure as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to make it kind of accommodate whether you have a smaller, more intimate size event going on, or you could use the backside and host something much bigger. That would be.
That may be our only question in the chat so far, which is okay. That's a lot to take in. But if there are any others, we can give it a minute here and let you all drop them in.
Did mention, so we have been recording this. We will post the slides and recording online. Mayor, I don't know if you have a specific page. I'm assuming on your on the city's website where people can find this. I don't know if you know that, or will post some instructions on where to find it.
We will make sure that that happens.
Okay, we do have a question. What will the village council be voting on when presented?
I think as far as the council's involvement, this is going to be kind of dual purpose because property itself, the developable property itself is primarily owned by the CIC. So it would be a partnership with the village and the CIC, whether or not council voting or council enacting legislation. I don't know that it would go that far. Whether or not council, basically forms, a level of support via resolution. But the next steps itself would be coming up with a plan as to whether or not we're able to market this, via, putting out an RFP to attract, a developer or developers to assist us once we have come up with guidelines in how we're going to approach this. So as far as what council is actually voting on, I think it's more of support. As of right now, there isn't anything to vote on as far as going under contract with anyone, but there would need to be, a defined working relationship between the village and the CIC as far as who the actual RFP would be with.
And if I
Taylor,
could
did you
just add, yeah, I was going to add to that. One thing that will be voted on at council, I don't know if it will be initially or if it will be, after it's been presented a time or two, is the actual plan. So there will be a plan document that comes along with all of this that encapsulates everything that you've seen here today and any additional feedback, so that it is documented in writing. And then that will be formally adopted by the village at that time as a business district plan.
Great, thank you. And Taylor's, just to intro her real quick, as a resident and also involved with the CIC.
Thanks, Kevin.
Not just a random person who popped up. But yes, typically a plan is kind of voted on as either approved or adopted, and that isn't necessarily regulatory in any way. It just becomes a guiding document that is referenced. And then, as the mayor said, if there were a change in property or any kind of RFP issued for some of these sites, that would be its own process. Let's see, anything else? Or anything else that we might want to chime in on? I think just to buy us a little bit more time. I could just echo kind of what's already been said, that we work in a lot of different places locally, but nationally as well. And I think as someone who only on a surface level knew about St. Bernard and hadn't done any kind of deep dive until this project started, it's been a really great place to be working. And it's been really fun to uncover some of these assets that are a little bit hidden. And from a location standpoint, to feel like you're in the heart of an urban area, but to have the village feel and the village assets and the community feel is really great. And from a physical standpoint, your streetscape is very solid. It has the bones already to be walkable, mixed use, and pedestrian oriented, and it's really just adding to that, and not really taking anything away, which is unique because in a lot of places you don't have that sort of foundation to build on. Ooh, and I bought enough time for one more question. Kelly asked, thoughts on expanding into Ross Park, ? Anybody want to chime in on that one? I'd have to know. My question would be, what do we mean by expanding?
I don't mind talking a little bit, but as far as the expanding into Ross Park, I mean, we've already made a big investment in Frank Robinson Field. As far as expanding into Ross Park, whether that be, opening it up, when we have more that's done down in the lower bowl of Vine Street with respect to the shopping center redevelopment, increasing density there and mixed use development. For there is a little bit of a gap between the rest of the district itself and opening it up into Ross Park. I think that could be another phase that could be worth exploring, definitely. But once we're able to start in the Heritage Hill District, move down into the lower bowl, I think with the redevelopment for the mixed use development, I think that would be a good time to maybe even explore, a next phase development towards Ross Park. But there's no way to basically kind of combine, the Vine Street Park District with Ross Park. But I do think in looking at the overall walkability, I think that as a next phase, if there is a need, I think that would definitely be an area that would be opened up.
Yeah, and I can add, I think that's a nice question to have in mind. I think that it's probably longer term than everything else we've shared today, but it would be good to have that in mind as a nearby asset for that future redevelopment of the square. There's that vacant property right at Vine and Ross Ave that would be really close walking distance to Ross Park. And I think for future businesses and office uses, having an amenity like a park nearby really benefits. And so being able to tout that proximity is going to help the redevelopment of that part of Vine Street.
Yeah, I will say, Ross Park, I'm glad it was brought up too, because we, as we were doing our first scan of things, we certainly noticed kind of the Ross Park investment, as well as the existence of Ludlow Park and the trail that goes to Ludlow Park and comes out by Wiedemann's. I think long term, as you grow, and particularly as the mayor and Danielle said, the lower bowl, the St. Bernard Square area, I think that with some intentionality in the later phases of that, as was mentioned, it could feel really, Ross Park and Ludlow Park could feel really connected with a vibrant kind of district in the middle. So it's important to think about for sure long term. All right. Well, again, just to jump back to the next step slide, we appreciate everybody coming to this. As you see and I'll let the mayor close us out here in a second too. But as you see this shared online, please share with your neighbors and your friends, and please continue to be involved and reach out. And I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities to be a part of this, not only in the next couple of months, but as part of the implementation, if you got particularly excited about anything.
Well, thank you again for everyone attending. I appreciate the professional guidance that we've had from Kevin and Daniela, to our awesome team that we have internally, including, administration, members of our CIC, members of the community, business owners, members of council. This has been a great process thus far. And this is really just the beginning. So the implementation stage, I think, is going to be super exciting. We can't wait for that. But the fact that we're just establishing goals that I do believe that are achievable. So this is super exciting. And again, I've loved every bit of this. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.